In the first video in this series, I looked at deinterlacing and denoising stuff inside of Grass Valley Edius using StaxRip for deinterlacing and Neat Video for denoising. Now I'm going to look at another option, which is a paid program called Video Enhance AI. AI, artificial intelligence. So basically what this is saying is it's a program for cleaning up and scaling video clips using artificial intelligence, which I think does the best job. It will take time and it will make your projects take a bit longer, but I think you get the best you're going to get at the moment out of this until AI gets much more cleverer. I'll still be using Edius. In my third video I'll look at the same kind of thing but using DaVinci Resolve instead of Edius. So let's go to these clips that I've just made, and I'm going to choose one of those and open it up. So here I've got the clip that is ready to be upscaled and deinterlaced. They've got a whole bunch of different models, as they call them over here, which are different ways of upscaling and changing things, which they recommend for different situations. I actually tend to use either these deinterlacing ones here or Proteus. I've been through all the others and these are the ones that I like the best. Now a lot of these don't deinterlace. Proteus, which I really like because it's got lots of nice options here for fiddling with the settings, doesn't deinterlace. So actually what I tend to do now is I will actually deinterlace my clips already in StaxRip, because I think that does still very, very good deinterlacing, and then I'll come into here and use Proteus to try and fine tune it and make a decent looking clip out of it. So that's what I tend to do. Now you don't have to do that, you could just go for one of these settings and deinterlace it and upscale it at the same time. I just think I get better results for that. So I'll go over that in a second, but if you did want to deinterlace it in here, what you got to do is choose one of these settings, and they're just different ways of doing stuff which they recommend for different types of footage. So obviously deinterlacing DV is meant for DV footage. Deinterlacing TV is just meant for standard analog footage. The major difference you've got between them is some of them makes 50 frames a second footage and some of it makes 25 frames a second footage. So if you remember, I said that because the stuff is interlaced, it's got 50 kind of half pictures a second. You can either keep it as 25 frames a second, which looks a bit more film-like, or you can make it 50 frames a second, where you've got 50 whole pictures a second, and it keeps the same kind of movement as the original. Now I like that filmic look, so for this drama that I'm doing, I want to keep it 25 frames a second. That immediately rules out half of these. That one, as you can see down here, says 25 frames a second. That one gives you 50 frames a second. This is 50 frames a second. So it really means I can use, for what I want to do, one of the robust ones. De-halo means it adds a little bit of extra cleanup. So sometimes on DV footage you do get a kind of halo, a sharp sort of extra line around people. And that helps to get rid of it. I know for my footage I use that one. And then what you would want to do is say, right, I'm going to deinterlace it and I'm going to scale it. Now how much do you scale it? Obviously you could just come down here and deinterlace it and keep it the same size. Or you put in some kind of setting. Now I've worked out for my own footage that if I go to 257, that will give me a clip that will scale this whole thing, make it big enough so that I don't see the black bars at the side, but not so big that I've cut off some of the image. How did I work that out? Trial and error. I made a couple of clips until I got a setting that I knew was right. And you see here it comes out to 1974, and obviously high definition is 1920, so it's making it a bit bigger than high def. This figure is then just worked out to keep the same proportions, because I'm still doing a square original clip, because like I say, I like to just change the originals, then use the new made versions in the edit, and then widescreen it from there. It gives me more to play with later on. So yeah, if I wanted to deinterlace it in here, I would do that, and then I'd pop down here and choose the format I want to make. There's actually not many formats in here. You can see it makes basically H.264 or ProRes in terms of video clips, or a bunch of stills. You could make a bunch of stills and then combine them later in your editing program. I prefer to make a movie. And out of these two, that will be good if you're trying to make something that you're going to give to somebody, but if you want to reuse it in an editing program, you want it as uncompressed as you can, so use this one, ProRes 422HQ. Those are the only real options you've got. And then you could just click the Start Processing button and off it would go and start processing it and deinterlacing it. And it's not the fastest thing in the world. So this clip must be something like 4 or 5 seconds, and you can see it's going to take 5 minutes. It uses the graphics card to do the work, so the better the graphics card, the better this processing is going to be. And say inside of this system I've got an NVIDIA 1660, which is a good graphics card, but it's a couple of years old, so there are better ones. So you've got a modern one, it'll be faster. But it is not the fastest thing in the world. And when I have just said, oh, let's take an old-fashioned TV program I want to watch and upscale an episode of Doctor Who and see what it looks like. Yeah, it took all night to do one episode of Doctor Who, which is 25 minutes for those of you who don't know old-fashioned Doctor Who. But yeah, you could do that, and that will give you a nice deinterlace thing. But I don't do that, because, like I said, I use the clips that I have done in StaxRip, and they're already deinterlaced, and then I can get a bit more playing with them. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm actually going to grab those 3 clips, which are the ones that I've just updated inside of StaxRip, which are the 3 clips that make up this scene. If I click Edit All, then no matter what changes I make on this one, they'll ripple through on these ones. And I am going to come over here and use the other format which I really like using, which is Proteus, which gives me all these lovely sliders I can play with. Another thing, if you're going to use Proteus, come up to the preferences and go to this one, Processing Save, and this Auto Detect Model Parameters, turn it off. If you leave that on, then it will change these settings on each clip and it will just guess it itself. And you might be happy to let it do that. I like to set it myself. That one took a lot of effort finding out, and eventually some help from one of the guys from Topaz telling me that setting was there, because I had no idea where to look. But anyway, that's off. I'm now going to start fiddling with these settings. Now, you can just click this little flash symbol, and it works out what it thinks are the best settings to make this video look good. And then, once it's set them, you press the preview button and you can have a look at what that's going to look like. Now on the preview here, I've gone up to view and I've said do a single view rather than a side-by-side view where you could compare the original and that. So, I mean, this is the original clip being upscaled and this is being cleaned up and deinterlaced and upscaled. And you notice it's actually quite a lot different, but I like to go to the one view so I can get the best look at it. And yep, it does a little bit of it and then it plays it for you. And yeah, that's not bad actually, that's not bad. There's a little bit of fizz around here I don't like, but I think I can do better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change some of these settings. Now, this is basically trial and error, doing a preview, making stuff up, going back and doing it again to get the favourite settings that you like. And it does vary depending on the clip. If I was to import this clip, for example, which is totally different lighting, that will want different settings to these. So yeah, it can be a long job fiddling with this, but you do get the best results you possibly can right now out of it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is come down and fiddle with some of these settings. Now I've actually found on these particular clips I really need to whack the noise reduction up, whack the sharpness up, don't need the compression, don't need the dehalo, don't need the deblurring, which I found out by a lot of trial and error. Revert compression is if a video clip is saved, particularly if it's something like an MP4 file. If it's saved as an MP4 file, it's compressed in some kind of codec, and they sometimes leave artifacts, especially if it's an MP4 file, while it's very heavily compressed, that tries to stop or get rid of those kind of artifacts. Now this clip is DV, it's relatively uncompressed, there's hardly any artifacts, so I don't need that. Recover Details will look at the clip and use its AI to invent stuff. And sometimes it works very well and sometimes it doesn't. Sharpen is just sharpness, so it's clever sharpness, but it will sharpen stuff up. So it doesn't invent details, it just makes what's there sharper. And sometimes if you whack that up too much, you kind of get a weirdy posterized look, or even some very peculiar things happen. Dehalo will try and get rid of a halo around things. So you see I can't see a halo around my head there, but sometimes on DV clips you do get an extra sort of line around me. And the deblur you would hope would work, because it is quite a blurred shot, but actually if you do that, I find it tends to look a bit posterized. Anyway, this is what I tend to find works best on these clips, and I'll do a quick preview. Now, you didn't see what the previous one was like, but these are sharper and nicer. All these nice lines have come out a lot better. It's going a bit too much maybe, because you are getting a bit of a echo on the white lines as well, and some of the stuff around me is looking, well, really rather weird. And maybe I've gone a bit too far on some of the settings, in which case I would come out of here and I'd try changing them. Let's up the recover details and down the sharpness, which I think looks actually a lot worse. So I'll stop that, go back, put up the sharpness, take down the recover details, and again fiddle until I get a result that I'm fairly happy with. Now, you're never going to make a standard definition high 8 clip, especially this kind of fuzzy one, look like high definition. I mean, that is just not going to happen. But you can make it look better than the original. And sometimes when I'm looking at this, I don't appreciate how much better than the original it is. I mean, if I pick this up and move it, or I put it on the side-by-side view, you can see that's actually quite a lot better, isn't it, really? It's not fuzzy, and I can see some details in here and everything else. Now, if I pop along to this one, let's preview what those settings will do on here. I mean, he's getting a penguin-y nose there, which I know he doesn't have. So maybe there's too much sharpness. But on the other hand, the hair's not bad. That's not bad. The trees in the background, they haven't come out too badly. So yeah, maybe I'll like that one. And what I'm going to do, I mean, I can't fix the fact we overexposed it. I think I'll leave that. I think I'll let all of them get on with it. Now, just like the deinterlacing, I'm going to make ProRes clips. I'm going to keep the audio. The other option you've got here is to add some grain. So the idea is that you've cleaned it all up. You've got rid of the noise. You know, it can get a little bit too computery farted around with, if you like. And adding a bit of grain might help. To say, looking at that one, yep, can't say that makes any difference. But maybe if I whack it up a bit. Now, I tend not to do this myself because I can add grain when I get into the editing program. In Edius, there's a noise filter you can put on stuff, or in Resolve, there's a film grain filter. But if you just look at the slight details, there's probably a bit too much in there. But it have kind of added in a bit of almost extra detail and stopped it looking too computery. Again, you'd fiddle with that to get an amount that you want, or turn it off and add it in later with another filter. But okay, I'm ready to go. I'm going to start processing, and off it'll go and start doing that for me. And like I said, it is not the fastest thing in the world. It reckons 5 minutes just for the first clip. When you're getting an idea there of the difference, you can see, look at that, is really quite staggeringly good compared to that. But there are occasions when I've done it and then I shove it in the editing program and I think, it's a bit too sharp, I've done a bit too much on there. This is basically the best I've been able to get with this footage. Maybe artificial intelligence will get better in the future and I'll be able to do it better. Don't know if you can see it there on this video, but there is something very strange about my eye going on there as well, which isn't quite right. And that sort of thing sometimes happens when you're doing the upscaling. But yeah, I'm going to let that get on with it and I'll come back and put that into the editing program. So now those clips are done, you can see in my folder here I've got 3 extra MOV files. It names them with the original name, plus it tells you what scale it's doing, which is 257. The prob thing actually is what related to whatever model you used here, so Proteus comes up as prob. So there we are, I've got those 3 clips. Let me bring them in, and I'm going to just create another VA track, and I'm going to shove in these clips above it. So I'll just take the first clip, put it on top. Obviously it's making it fit, but if I go to the layouter in this, now the reason that I upscaled it in Topaz as opposed to upscaling it in Edius, which is what I did with the other clips, was that Topaz is doing this AI upscaling, so that's half the point of using it. So this clip is actually the right size, and I'm just going to go into the layout and click original size so that it fits. It fits and just the edges go off there a bit because it's chopping off the black stuff. But yeah, I've now got a clip which is the right size. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to compare that to this render that I made up with Neat Video. This is the Topaz version. A lot nicer around here. All these lines are a lot nicer. Looks like more detail in here. My face, maybe not. My face is getting a bit posterized. I might have gone a bit over the top on some of the things there. Maybe a bit of the sharpening, or a bit of the recover details, but I do overall prefer that, and obviously considerably better than what I started with. Here is the version which I deinterlaced and then upscaled inside of Edius, and here is the version that's being done with Topaz. Still woefully overexposed, but that's not the point. The point is it looks sharper and nicer. Now you might not want to spend as much time as I do on upscaling all this stuff. This is a project I've been working on for years, so naturally it's something that I want to make look as good as possible, and I am spending absolutely hours on it. You might not want to do that. You could just take your final movie and whack it into Topaz and then scale it that way. It actually does a very good job of scaling a final movie. You just do a better job if you do it clip by clip. Anyway, that's really gone through how I would upscale and deinterlace stuff using Edius and either Neat Video or Topaz. Hope you found that useful. I will be doing another video which is kind of the same kind of thing, which is aimed at people who use DaVinci Resolve, because there's a couple of other things in DaVinci Resolve, particularly for getting rid of those dropout, which are very nice in the full version. So I wanted to mention those. The actual procedure for doing stuff inside of Topaz and Strax and everything else is exactly the same with Resolve as it is with Edius. You basically take the clips there and there and do the same stuff. What is slightly different is just the way you get the clips out of Resolve and a couple of extra things you can do in Resolve. So there'll be another video about that. Have a look at that if you're interested in seeing how that works in Resolve. You end up with the same result regardless, because actually all the hard work is being done by these two programs, either StaxRip, which is completely free, or Topaz, which is about £200, and I'll put links in the description. You can't buy Topaz or Neat Video from me, you have to get them directly from the manufacturers. Obviously what I can help with is if you want a system that goes around them, I can help with that and make a system for you, or I can give you support on how to set things up or any other issues that you have with it. Anyway, hope you found that useful. If you want more information on me, then go to www.dvctraining.co.uk. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video. Carry on and have a look at the Resolve video if you're interested in how that works. And I'll see you next time.